Steve Harvey had been hosting Family Feud for over 17 years, and during that time, he had witnessed countless attempts at humor from contestants hoping to entertain the audience or lighten the competitive atmosphere of the game. Most of these attempts were harmless, eliciting polite laughter or friendly groans depending on the quality of the joke. But on that warm March afternoon in 2025, he would witness a moment when what one husband intended as clever humor would backfire so spectacularly, and so publicly that it would leave the entire studio in stunned silence. What began as an attempt to be funny would transform into a profound lesson about the difference between humor that brings people together and humor that tears them apart, between jokes that celebrate love and jokes that expose deep fractures in a relationship that perhaps should never have been brought onto national television in the first place. If you appreciate stories that examine the complexities of marriage and the importance of mutual respect in relationships, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that explore the real dynamics of family life and the lessons we can learn from moments when those dynamics are revealed in unexpectedly public ways. The Crawford family from Charlotte, North Carolina, stood ready to compete against the Williams family from Atlanta, Georgia. The Crawford family consisted of Brian Crawford, age 43, who worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative and carried himself with the polished confidence of someone accustomed to making presentations and closing deals. Standing beside him was his wife, Jennifer Crawford, age 41, who introduced herself as a full-time mother to their 3 children and explained that she had left her career in marketing 8 years earlier when their first child was born. Their daughter, Amber, age 19, was home from college for spring break and studying psychology at the University of North Carolina. Their son, Tyler, age 16, was a high school junior who played varsity basketball. Completing the family was Brian's brother, Michael, age 39, who worked as an investment banker and seemed to share his brother's self-assured demeanor and tendency toward what they apparently considered witty commentary. From the opening moments of the family introduction, Steve Harvey observed a dynamic between Brian and Jennifer that raised some concerns. Brian frequently interrupted Jennifer when she spoke, finishing her sentences or correcting minor details in ways that seemed designed to assert his dominance rather than to genuinely clarify information. Jennifer responded to these interruptions with tight smiles and small nods, her body language suggesting someone who had become accustomed to being talked over and had learned to simply accept it rather than push back. The game progressed through several rounds with the Crawford family performing well and maintaining their lead over the Williams family. Brian was particularly vocal throughout, offering running commentary on the questions and answers, celebrating enthusiastically when his family members provided correct responses, and making frequent asides to the audience that he clearly believed were humorous and charming. Jennifer participated quietly, providing solid answers when her turn came, but otherwise maintaining a reserved presence that contrasted sharply with her husband's animated performance. Then came the question that would set in motion the events that would stun the entire studio. Steve Harvey walked to the center of the stage and read from the card with his characteristic timing and energy. "We surveyed 100 people. Top 7 answers on the board. Name something a husband appreciates about his wife." The question seemed straightforward enough, designed to elicit affectionate responses about the qualities that make marriages strong and the attributes that husbands value in their partners. Brian buzzed in first, beating the opposing family to the response. But instead of offering a genuine answer about what he appreciated about Jennifer, he chose to make what he apparently considered a clever joke. "Her ability to ignore all my flaws and bad habits." He delivered the line with a smirk and a glance toward the audience, clearly expecting laughter and perhaps even applause for his self-deprecating humor. The answer was not on the board. Steve's expression showed mild disapproval, but he moved on to the opposing family, who answered her love and support and won the face-off. The Crawford family returned to their positions to wait for another opportunity to play. Several rounds later, the Crawford family won another face-off and began playing. The question this time was, name something wives wish their husbands would do more often. When it came to Brian's turn to answer, he once again chose to go for what he perceived as humor rather than offering a straightforward response. "Notice when she gets her nails done, because apparently that is a federal offense if you miss it." He laughed at his own joke and looked to the audience for validation. The answer was not on the board, giving the Crawford family their first strike. Jennifer's expression had tightened considerably and her daughter Amber was looking at her father with clear disapproval. Steve Harvey's face showed that he was beginning to lose patience with Brian's approach to the game. The family continued playing, with other members providing serious answers that accumulated points on the board. Then it came around to Brian's turn again. The question still on the board was, name something wives wish their husbands would do more often. Brian, apparently undeterred by his previous failed attempts at humor, decided to try again. Stop and ask for directions, because God forbid a man should admit he does not know where he is going while his wife nags him from the passenger seat. He delivered this line with exaggerated comic timing, clearly believing he was landing a universally relatable joke about marital dynamics. The answer was not on the board. Strike two for the Crawford family. But more significantly, Jennifer's face had gone pale. Her hands were clenched into tight fists at her sides, and her jaw was set in a way that suggested she was working very hard to contain emotions that were threatening to overflow. Amber had moved closer to her mother and had placed a protective hand on her arm. Steve Harvey set down his cards and walked over to Brian. His expression was serious, his voice carrying a weight that made clear he was no longer in the mood for jokes. Brian, I need to talk to you for a minute. You have now made 3 attempts to answer questions on this show, and all 3 times you have chosen to make jokes at your wife's expense rather than giving genuine answers. I'm starting to wonder if there is something going on here that we need to address. Brian seemed surprised by Steve's serious tone. He shrugged and attempted to maintain his casual demeanor. Come on, Steve, I am just having fun with it. It is all in good humor. Jennifer knows I am just joking around. Right, honey? He turned to Jennifer with what appeared to be a somewhat challenging look, as though daring her to contradict him in front of the cameras and the audience. But Jennifer did not respond the way Brian clearly expected. Instead of offering the reassuring agreement he was seeking, she shook her head slowly. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried clearly through the now silent studio. No, Brian, it is not all in good humor. It has never been all in good humor. For 15 years of marriage, you have been making jokes at my expense. Jokes about my appearance, jokes about my intelligence, jokes about me being a nag or being overly sensitive or being unable to navigate or handle money or make decisions. You present these jokes as affectionate teasing, as just how couples talk to each other, but they are not affectionate. They are mean. They are designed to make you look clever and to make me look foolish, and I am tired of it. The studio fell into absolute stunned silence. Brian's face had gone from confident and amused to shocked and defensive. The audience members were completely still, many of them leaning forward as they realized they were witnessing something far more significant than a typical game show moment. Jennifer continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. Do you know what you have not done even once since we have been on this stage? You have not said a single genuine thing about what you appreciate about me. When Steve asked what a husband appreciates about his wife, you could have said that you appreciate how I gave up my career to raise our children. You could have said that you appreciate how I manage our entire household so that you can focus on your work without having to think about whether there is food in the refrigerator, or whether the bills are paid, or whether the kids have what they need for school. You could have said that you appreciate the fact that I have supported you through every career change and every challenge for 15 years. But you did not say any of those things. Instead, you made a joke about how I ignore your flaws. She paused, her eyes glistening with tears that she was fighting to control. And when the question was about what wives wish their husbands would do more often, you could have acknowledged that maybe I wish you would help more with the household responsibilities, or that you would spend more time with our children instead of always being at work or on the golf course, or that you would speak to me with respect instead of constant mockery. But instead, you made jokes about me nagging you and about my supposed inability to read a map. You reduced our marriage to a series of tired stereotypes about nagging wives and bumbling husbands, and you did it in front of our children and in front of millions of people who will eventually watch this. Brian attempted to interrupt, but Steve Harvey held up his hand to stop him. No, Brian, you are going to let your wife finish speaking. You have had plenty of opportunity to talk. Now it is her turn. Jennifer took a shaky breath and continued. The worst part is that this is not new behavior. This is how you have treated me for our entire marriage. But I accepted it because I thought that was just how marriages worked. I thought that husbands making fun of their wives was normal. I thought that being the butt of constant jokes was just part of being a wife, and that I should be able to take it without complaining. But standing here today, hearing you make those same tired jokes in front of all these people, I realize something. I do not have to accept this. I do not have to let you treat me this way. And our children should not have to watch their father disrespect their mother and think that this is what love looks like. Amber spoke up, her voice filled with emotion. Dad, Mom is right. I have watched you make fun of her my entire life. When I was younger, I did not really understand what was happening. But now that I am older and I am learning about healthy relationships and communication, I realize that the way you treat mom is not okay. You do not build her up. You tear her down. And you do it constantly, and then you act like she is the problem when she gets hurt by it. Tyler added his voice to his sister's. Dad, I love you, but I am embarrassed by how you talk about mom. When my friends are over and you make jokes about mom being bad with directions or being overly emotional or whatever, I can see them getting uncomfortable. I can see them looking at mom and feeling sorry for her. And I feel ashamed because I know they are thinking that my dad does not respect my mom. Michael, Brian's brother, looked deeply uncomfortable. He started to say something in Brian's defense but then stopped, seeming to realize that there was no defense to be offered. Instead, he simply looked down at his feet, his silence speaking volumes about his recognition that his brother had indeed crossed lines that should not have been crossed. Steve Harvey turned his full attention to Brian, his expression grave and his voice carrying the weight of years of experience observing family dynamics and understanding the difference between healthy and unhealthy patterns of interaction. Brian, I want you to listen very carefully to what I am about to say. What your wife and your children just described is not normal marital banter. It is not harmless teasing. It is a pattern of disrespect that has clearly been going on for years and that has damaged your wife's sense of worth and your children's understanding of what marriage should look like. He continued, his words measured but firm. When you use humor as a weapon to make yourself look good at your wife's expense, that is not love. When you make jokes that rely on diminishing your partner's intelligence or capabilities or worth, that is not affection. That is cruelty disguised as comedy. And the fact that you are more concerned right now with defending your jokes than with addressing the very real pain your wife and children are expressing tells me that this is a much deeper problem than just poor comedic timing. Brian's face had cycled through several emotions during this exchange, moving from shock to defensiveness to something that might have been recognition of the gravity of what was happening. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its earlier confidence. I never meant to hurt anyone. I thought I was being funny. I thought that was just how guys talked about their wives. My dad made jokes like that about my mom. I have heard other men make similar jokes. I did not think it was a big deal. Steve shook his head. Brian, whether you meant to hurt people or not, you did hurt them. Your wife just told you in front of all of us that your jokes have been hurting her for 15 years. Your daughter just told you that she is embarrassed by how you talk about her mother. Your son just told you that he feels ashamed when his friends witness your disrespect. Those are the consequences of your actions, regardless of your intentions. And now you have a choice to make about how you are going to respond to this information. He turned to address the broader audience and the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are witnessing here is an important moment. We are seeing what happens when patterns of disrespect that have been normalized and excused as just joking around are finally called out and named for what they really are. This is not about being overly sensitive or not being able to take a joke. This is about the fundamental requirement that we treat our partners with dignity and respect, especially in public. Steve looked back at Brian. You came on this show thinking you were going to be the funny guy, the charming husband who could make the audience laugh with your witty observations about marriage. But what actually happened is that you exposed a fundamental problem in your relationship. And now everyone in this studio and everyone who watches this episode is going to see that problem. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Brian looked at Jennifer, really looked at her perhaps for the first time in the entire taping. He saw the pain in her eyes, the way her shoulders were hunched as though she were trying to make herself smaller, the defensive way she held her arms wrapped around herself. He saw his children standing protectively near their mother, their expressions making clear whose side they were on in this moment. And perhaps for the first time, he understood the full weight of the harm he had caused. When Brian spoke again, his voice was different. The bravado and defensiveness had fallen away, replaced by something that sounded like genuine remorse and perhaps shock at seeing himself through others' eyes. Jennifer, I am so sorry. I had no idea that my jokes were hurting you this badly. I thought you understood that I did not really mean the things I said, that they were just throwaway comments that did not reflect how I actually felt about you. But I am hearing you now. I am hearing what you are saying and what the kids are saying, and I am understanding that I have been blind to the damage I was causing. He paused, struggling to find the right words. I do appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do for our family, everything you sacrifice to raise our children, the way you hold our family together. I have just never been good at expressing those feelings, so I defaulted to humor instead. But I see now that the humor I was using was not building you up. It was tearing you down. And I need to change that. I need to learn how to express appreciation and affection in ways that actually feel like appreciation and affection rather than thinly veiled criticism. Jennifer listened to her husband's words, her expression showing cautious hope mixed with deep hurt that would not be erased by a single apology. Brian, I want to believe you. I want to believe that this moment has genuinely opened your eyes and that you are going to change how you treat me. But words are easy. I need to see sustained change in your behavior. I need to see you speak about me and to me with respect, not just today when everyone is watching, but every day for the rest of our marriage. If you cannot do that, then I need to seriously reconsider whether this marriage is healthy for me and for our children. Steve Harvey made a decision in that moment to offer support beyond just the platform for this difficult conversation. Crawford family, I'm going to connect you with a marriage counselor who specializes in communication patterns and respect in relationships. You clearly have work to do as a couple and as a family, and you need professional support to navigate that work. I'm also going to suggest that you, Brian, do some individual counseling to examine why you have relied on disrespectful humor as your primary mode of interacting with your wife, and to develop healthier patterns of communication. The game did not resume that day. Instead, the Crawford family was escorted backstage, where they met with a counselor who provided immediate support and resources for addressing the issues that had been so publicly revealed. The producers made the decision to include this segment in the aired episode, with the Crawford family's permission, because they recognized its potential educational value in helping viewers recognize similar patterns in their own relationships. When the episode aired 8 weeks later, the response was immediate and intense. The segment went viral within hours, generating millions of views and sparking heated discussions across social media platforms and in homes around the country. Many viewers expressed admiration for Jennifer's courage in speaking her truth, and for Steve Harvey's willingness to call out Brian's behavior rather than letting it slide in the interest of keeping the show moving. Thousands of women shared stories of their own experiences with husbands or partners who used humor as a cover for disrespect and diminishment. They described similar patterns of constant jokes at their expense, of having their feelings dismissed when they expressed hurt, of being told they were too sensitive or could not take a joke when they objected to being mocked. Many expressed that watching Jennifer stand up for herself had inspired them to have similar conversations in their own relationships. The segment also generated reflection and conversation among men. Some expressed shock at recognizing their own behavior in Brian's jokes, and acknowledged that they had never considered how their attempts at humor might be affecting their partners. Others defended Brian, arguing that marriage required the ability to laugh at oneself, and that his wife and children had overreacted to harmless jokes. This divide in responses revealed broader cultural disagreements about where the line falls between affectionate teasing and disrespectful mockery in relationships. Relationship experts and marriage counselors used the segment extensively in their work with couples. They pointed to Brian's behavior as an example of what they called weaponized humor, the use of jokes and teasing to assert dominance, express criticism, and maintain control in a relationship while maintaining plausible deniability by claiming to just be joking. They emphasized that humor in healthy relationships should bring both partners joy and should never rely on making one partner the consistent target of mockery. The Crawford family engaged in intensive marriage counseling following the taping. The process was difficult and often contentious. Brian struggled initially to accept that his behavior had been as harmful as Jennifer and the children described. He cycled through defensiveness, minimization of the harm he had caused, and attempts to shift blame onto Jennifer for being overly sensitive. However, with consistent therapeutic intervention and the undeniable evidence of the pain his family had expressed on national television, he gradually began to recognize the patterns in his behavior and their impact. Jennifer worked through her own process of understanding how she had accepted and normalized disrespect for so many years. She examined the messages she had received about marriage and about women's roles that had taught her to accept being diminished by her husband. She worked on rebuilding her self-esteem and learning to set boundaries about acceptable treatment. 6 months after the initial airing, the Crawford family agreed to participate in a follow-up interview. The changes in the family dynamics were immediately apparent. Brian and Jennifer sat next to each other, but with visible space between them, their body language suggesting a relationship that was still in the process of healing and rebuilding trust. Brian appeared humbler and less self-assured than he had during the original taping, while Jennifer seemed stronger and more confident in her presence. Jennifer shared that the months since the Family Feud taping had been among the most difficult of her marriage, but also potentially the most transformative. Brian has been working hard in therapy to understand his patterns and to change how he communicates. It has not been perfect. There have been times when he has fallen back into old habits of using jokes to deflect or to criticize. But he has also shown genuine effort to catch himself, to apologize when he falls short, and to actively practice speaking to me and about me with respect. Brian spoke with noticeably more humility and self-awareness than he had demonstrated during the original episode. The past 6 months have been a process of confronting some very uncomfortable truths about myself and about how I have treated Jennifer. Watching that episode air and seeing myself through the eyes of millions of viewers was humbling and honestly devastating. I saw myself the way my wife and children had been seeing me for years, as someone who used humor as a weapon to diminish the person I claimed to love. That realization forced me to do some deep work on why I behaved that way and how I could change. He continued, addressing Jennifer directly. I cannot undo 15 years of disrespectful treatment. I cannot take back all the jokes that hurt you or erase the damage to your self-esteem. But I can commit to doing better every day going forward. I can commit to speaking about you with the respect and appreciation you have always deserved. And I can model for our children what it looks like to acknowledge when you have been wrong and to genuinely work to change harmful patterns. Amber and Tyler also participated in the follow-up interview, sharing their observations of how their parents' relationship had evolved. Amber described feeling hopeful about the changes she had witnessed. It has been difficult to watch my parents work through this, but I am also proud of both of them. I am proud of my mom for finally standing up and demanding to be treated with respect. And I am proud of my dad for actually listening and doing the hard work of changing, rather than just expecting everything to go back to normal after a quick apology. Tyler added that witnessing his parents' struggle had shaped his own understanding of relationships in important ways. I learned what not to do in a relationship by watching my dad's behavior, but I am also learning what it looks like to take accountability and to genuinely work to repair harm. Both of those lessons are valuable, even though I wish the situation that taught them to me had never happened. The follow-up segment included expert commentary on the process of rebuilding respect in a marriage after years of patterns of disrespect. Therapists emphasize that change requires sustained effort over time, not just a single apology or a brief period of improved behavior. They noted that Jennifer was right to require demonstrated change over an extended period before fully trusting that the relationship had fundamentally shifted. 1 year after that March afternoon, when Brian's joke backfired so spectacularly, the long-term impact of that moment continued to unfold. The Crawford family remained together and continued in couples and family therapy. Their marriage was described by both partners as a work in progress, healing from years of accumulated hurt, but moving in a healthier direction. The segment became a widely used teaching tool in premarital counseling programs, relationship education courses, and domestic violence prevention training. Counselors used it to help couples identify the difference between humor that builds connection and humor that damages it. Educators used it to teach young people about respect in relationships and the importance of how partners speak to and about each other. Brian became involved in men's groups focused on healthy masculinity and respectful relationships. He spoke openly about his experience and the work he had done to change his patterns of communication. His willingness to be vulnerable about his failures and his growth process helped other men recognize similar patterns in their own relationships and consider making changes. Jennifer returned to part-time work in marketing, reclaiming a piece of her professional identity that she had set aside years earlier. She also became involved in supporting other women who were navigating difficult relationship dynamics, offering both the perspective of someone who had endured years of subtle disrespect and the hope of someone working toward a healthier partnership. The moment when Brian Crawford stood on the Family Feud stage attempting to be clever and funny, only to have his jokes expose the deep dysfunction in his marriage and spark a confrontation that would change his family forever, became one of the most memorable and impactful moments in the show's history. It demonstrated that sometimes our attempts to be entertaining reveal far more about us than we intend, and that the audience for our performance may not react the way we expect when they witness behavior that crosses important lines. If this story has resonated with you, or helped you recognize patterns in your own relationships or the relationships of people you care about. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with someone who might benefit from seeing it. Most importantly, examine how you speak to and about your partner. Ask yourself whether your words build them up or tear them down, whether your humor brings you closer together or creates distance and hurt. Remember that what we normalize as just joking around may actually be causing deep and lasting harm to the people we claim to love most. The Crawford family learned this lesson in the most public way possible, but their willingness to confront the problem and work toward change offers hope that patterns of disrespect can be recognized and transformed when both partners commit to doing the difficult work of building a relationship based on genuine mutual respect, rather than one that relies on mockery disguised as affection.